Grown, man.
Listen, I wanted to talk about the double-headed.
It's not but one thing.
In a limited time frame, there's only so much you can cover.
Right.
And, we are limited in our time for this workshop. We thank Mustafa El-Amin for his remarks. We did have a good time in Washington 2 years ago, and it's good to have part 2 of this historic event. We have since had a chance to review his book, Freemasonry, Ancient Egypt, and the Islamic Destiny, and we appreciate his dedication of his acknowledgments of the contributions made by the members of the Philaxis Society. During the past 2 years, I have, well, not just actually during the past 2 years, but for the last several years, due to the research I've done and the articles I've written, I have gained somewhat of a reputation as an authority on Islam, and often have been asked the question by people in various places, would you ever consider becoming a Muslim? And my reply to them has always been no. I'm very much committed to my belief as a Christian since having become a Christian over 20 years ago. And I'm also very committed to the cause of Prince Hall Freemasonry. I have said before, and I'll say it again, that there's no organization historically that was and is more committed to the cause of African American liberation than the Prince Hall Masonic Fraternity. And under no circumstances would I ever consider dropping my membership in the Prince Hall Masonic Fraternity. I am a Prince Hall Mason now. I will be a Prince Hall Mason when I die. And I hope every Prince Hall Mason in this room says the same thing. No one, absolutely no one on the face of the earth has the right to demand, recommend, or even suggest that a Prince Hall Mason drop out of Masonry. And if a person joins a particular religion and a Prince Hall Mason decides to change his faith, that's his prerogative. But the new religious leader that he goes to, it is none of his business to try to tell him you can no longer be a Mason. And he's violating all bounds of authority when he does so. Everyone has a right to their belief. Everyone has a right to express their belief however they will. There's been a lot of controversy, of course, concerning this book, The Satanic Verses. I haven't read it thus far. No copies have been available in Waco, Texas, where I live, though they probably, I've checked all the bookstores, they don't have it yet. They probably will eventually. But anyway, anything anybody writes, somebody's going to be offended by it. And I haven't read the book, so I can't pass judgment on just what I've heard other people say about it. But nobody has the right to threaten to put somebody to death because they don't like what they've written. Salman Rushdie may be as wrong can be, but he has a right to his belief. And it is absolutely outrageous that Ayatollah Khomeini could put a death sentence on him. And actually, the term Satanic Verses would be a very good description of the sayings of Ayatollah Khomeini, because I cannot say anybody could consider him a holy man. The man is full of Satan from the word go. And for every word of blasphemy that Salman Rushdie has uttered, Ayatollah Khomeini has issued 1,000,000 words of blasphemy. And when the Iranian Revolution first occurred, the late great president of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, said, "That is not Islam at all, that is hate. And hate is not what we need." I also want to comment on something that one of the things Mustafa and I agreed on about the need for revision of the shrine ritual. I agree fully with that. And some of that stuff could be cut out. And I wish it would be cut out. And I hope the Imperial Council will cut it out. There's a lot of room for improvement. Masonry is not perfect. No body of Masonry is perfect. All of it can use some improvement. But you know, various places there has been effort made to accommodate the critics in recent years. For example, in England, they did I think in the Grand Lodge of England, also the Grand Lodge of Maryland, I believe it was, they did, or was it Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania did away with the penal signs. But that didn't silence the critics. The people that were raving about that are going to be raving about something else. There's room for reform. There's room for alteration. But we're not going to reform ourselves. We're not going to alter ourselves out of existence. And in no time have I seen the critics of Masonry say, well, if you do this, you Masons, then we'll do this. If you concede this point, we'll concede this point. I have never seen any of the critics make such an offer. And so before we start making any changes, let's demand some concessions from the critics in return. Thank you.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions, just a statement, short statement, how I have seen this young man grow. And not only that, I have seen the transformation of thought coming from the Muslim community in regards to other religions and more especially Freemasonry. There's only one thing missing in Mustafa when it comes to understanding the symbols of Freemasonry, and that is the one thing that will always escape him until he becomes a Mason. Just like I can study all the Islamic teachings I can, but until I make that giant step and become a Muslim, I will forever miss the Islamic secret. There is but one secret in Freemasonry. As Jerry Martingale brought out, we talk about secrets, and it's amazing how people read our rituals and philosophy and say, I got the secret. My brothers, I submit to you and to Mustafa, whose presentation, and he makes excuses for talking fast. Now, it wasn't time that made you talk fast. Jeremiah called it fire locked up in the bones. Recognize that God is speaking to you. But you see, when you talk about the two, you must understand that Freemasons look upon another two. And until we recognize that two, we cannot overlook the little pettiness of writers of different thought. Just a few years ago, the Islamic writings against Christ was atrocious. When I say not Islamic, but those that profess to Islam, was atrocious. But no holy war was declared. And what Christian in here did not either want to see or to discount the last temptation of Christ. Now, brothers, I submit to you that if your religion is as strong as your fanatical expressions, that nothing can be written to shake it.
That's right.
Because when we are received on the master's degree, where we have mastered the little pettiness that exists between two brothers, then you will understand the 2 points of the compasses. And this will escape the member, but the Mason will understand it. Love of God, love of man. And until we can understand those 2 points of the compasses, Freemasonry will escape Mustafa, and the secret of Islam will escape me. I'm not ready to deny Christianity because I view it differently from those that do not adhere to it. You view Islam teachings different than those that just read about it. Your books are well written, deep thought. You will always miss the cohesiveness that calls sand to be flighty like it is. And that secret is, what does it mean to you?
Question. Yeah, well, not really a question. I met you 2 years ago when I first came to the Flaxus Convention, and I certainly appreciate what you had to say as I do now, and I bought the book that you read then. I bought 3 more now, which I intend to get autographs on.
Well, that'll get you first.
Certainly, I guess I've been interested in religion since I was knee-high to a duck. I know I used to go to church, and I never used to like to sit down with the Sunday school kids. I used to go to Mount Olive Baptist Church on 120th Street in Lenox Avenue. And I think I was about 12 or 13. Never just like to sit down in Sunday school, go up there and sit with the grown-ups and listen to the preacher preach. And I didn't understand all of what he was saying, but anyhow, I listened to him, and some of it must have stuff. But at any rate, I look at your religion based on what I've been exposed to as the beginning of it, like a tree. As the basic concept of one God, the tree, and looking at the religion itself. It started with the tree trunk, both its roots beneath it. But then the different branches of religion was like the branches that branched out. And then, of course, the smaller branches and the leaves and so on would be the different sects or parts of these other different religions. So that's the way I look at it now. But certainly the concept, all of them profess one God, and certainly there is one God. But because as you examine the universe and look at it, what a mess would be if there was more than one person trying to make it, or one being trying to make it. So it had to be somebody in power that could say, let there be light and there was light. Thank you.
As you gentlemen are aware, I have never made any personal attacks on Prince Hall, the man, in any of my writings or any of my talks. I've never done that. My ideals have been against, if anything, has been against concepts, maybe philosophies that we might have disagreed on, secrecy, which I made a big thing out of once before when we was in Washington. So I've never done that.
Right.
And I think we as men, we take the high road. I said I never made any attacks against Prince Hall Mason, the man. And in my studies, I've found him to have been a strong advocate of education, and he has been a strong man for the freedom of our people. And I respect that, and I appreciate that. But the Reverend Uzzel, in his latest book review, has made a personal attack upon a man who we hold very dearly, and that is Imam Muhammad. He has brought us from dark symbolism, and he has put us into a greater understanding of the religion and on the sooner path, which is the path of Prophet Muhammad with the universal belief in Islam. And he has done much for us and is respected not only by us, but throughout the world. And here in America, he has earned the 4 Freedom Awards as well as other things. Reverend Uzzel has made certain personal attacks, which I have to bring to your attention because we're forging unity, and at this point, it seems like a divisive tactic. Maybe it's not. He calls Imam Muhammad in here, he calls him an Uncle Tom, for one, which just a term is not associated with Muslims, period. We've been called a lot of things, but not Uncle Tom. You know that, right? We've never been called Uncle Tom, regardless of what the group is. So he's way out of left field on that. You understand? Okay, he also says here, one of the worst enemies of Prince Hall Masonry in Black America is Imam Muhammad, the mentor of Mustafa El-Amin. Muhammad is as guilty as any white Mason of trying to deny to black men the privileges of Masonry by means of his outrageous lies, which unfortunately his followers are gullible enough to believe. I have never, and I don't think any of you men, ever heard Imam Muhammad mention Prince Hall the man, let alone speak ill-hearted of him. Never. And Uzzel is an intelligent man. He's a wise man, and he's well-versed. And he knows he has to support his statements with evidence. But nowhere in this review, in his 12 or 13 outlandish statements against Imam Muhammad, does he support not one. And the one, there's one, and he tries to support that by saying, I've talked to certain people, and they've said such and such and such and such. Now, to me, I don't understand that. I'm not necessarily offended. I felt it was a strategy to get me all riled up and miss my points and not talk about what I was talking about. You know, and don't take this personal, but you know how these people operate, right? We know how they operate. That's one thing as being the victim. We know how they operate, but they don't know us. They don't know us well enough to know that there's a bond from our experience. There's a bond between us that they won't be able to break ever again, God willing. So I want to bring that out to your attention. So in the next book review, and that's there. I assume it will be there. And another point that he made about Muslims being Masons, and I'm sure there are Muslims that are Masons. Turkey is a whole Islamic country, and they have Masons there. There's African Americans that are Masons. Admittedly, I'm sure that is the case. But there's something you need to consider. In this book review, when he makes slanderous statements like that, not from the thing you should consider is not what I say as not being a member, but the members that are Muslims within the ranks of Prince Hall Masonry. It can cause some difficulty, some confusion, I would think, within the total ranks for those that are Muslims to read this type of outlandish statement. And you can write what you want, no death threats and things like that. The other thing to respond to what you said is a person can write what they want to write, but you're Masons and you take oaths. Now it may be antiquated, the death oath, but you know you can't just write anything you want to write. Yeah, it may be symbolic, but the average person is scared as hell.
No.
Hey, listen, listen.
I told you it's going to escape you. You can't read about it.
You know what?
No, it's not an interest.
I'm not here to defend the Ayatollah Khomeini.
No, but that death oath is large.
His threat may be symbolic also. I don't know. I haven't consulted with him. Salman Rushdie is still around, I believe. So.
He's in hiding, though.
Brother Mustafa, I would like to point out one of the rules of Freemasonry. We discussed it, hopefully, on an intelligent level here, and as I forewarned Brother Uzzel in the little boys' room, that there are ways to say something. Now, I would take offense, Brother Uzzel, at those words. And I mean, I'm not a Muslim, but I would take offense because this man is a recognized leader of the Muslim community. And to say differently is to say they're a bunch of damn fools. You're not talking about the man, you're talking about the Father. It's just like if somebody's talking about Jesus Christ, they're talking about me. But on the other hand, I think that if you say something in private, you say it. That's one thing. But when it is printed, that's another. Because a person can read and not understand.
But what is all this Jacobite business? That's something that needs to stop.
See, he says, what is all this Jacobite business? That's something that needs to stop. If you don't know what it is, how do you know it needs to stop?
Well, I know what it is. I want you to explain to them.
I haven't heard anyone else ask the question but you.
Is that the theory advanced by the late Elijah Muhammad?
No, it was. I'm getting a signal here, but
we're going a little bit too far into other times or other things, and let's don't get out of hand.
No, we won't. We won't let it count.
All right, let me, Brother Daly, with the permission of the President, Grandmasters. Grandmasters. I'm asking you to yield your time since last night we had our brain so done. All right, let's go.
You know the.
Let us hear what.
What Jacobite.
Yeah, Lawrence D. Muhammad claims that Freemasons are tools of the Jacobites. To me, that is an outrageous lie, and he needs to stop telling me.
Well, let's hear what the Jacobites are.
Well, he said a voice will come from the heavens saying, it is done, right? We can go ahead and talk now, right? Well, the concept of Jacobite, first of all, Reverend Uzzel has never heard that himself. He's talked to some people that say he heard it. The allusion to Jacobite, and it was not talking just specifically about Freemasonry, the allusion to the term Jacobite referred to Jacob, not in the Quran, but symbolically as he appeared in the Bible, of stealing his brother's birthright. And anyone that adhered to that type of personality, that type of deception, was considered a Jacobite. He was a supplanter, as it is presented there, to undermine, to undercut, to manipulate. And that was the term that he used when he first originally came into office, pulling away as a strategy from calling white folks devils, all right? Feeding you gradually, right? Calling them a jinn at one point, okay? Then he said a Jacobite conspiracy, which was, again, Jacob's conspiracy against his brother to steal his birthright. And he felt, if I remember the comments on that, he felt that any of these groups, anyone that was stealing the knowledge, that was stealing the rights of any people was Jacobite conspirators. And that is what he referred to. And sure, he has made, and he's capable of defending himself, comments concerning Freemasonry just as I have. But as I said here, he has never pinpointed and never referred to Prince Hall or to Black Masonry. When I speak of Freemasonry, and I believe that's what he refers to, I don't want to speak for him, but what he refers to is this ideal of the white folks, whether they're Masons or not, of suppressing and holding the knowledge. And what we need is education and the free expression. When he referred to that, that is who he's referring to. The bigger picture. He's not necessarily referring to us as a people, because we were not the architects, the designers, and the fashioners of the modern masonry. We're the architects and designers of the Prince Hall masonry. So when he speaks of masonry, perhaps Uzzel, not personally, but because we are different ethnic groups, if you speak about certain situations, he's caught up because of the situation he's in that dual situation. Where if we talk about the oppression of our people, because it was his people who did it, it may affect him, understandably, in a different way than it would affect us. So he may not be able to be as objective. But I've explained this to him before, what Jacobite meant, and what it actually meant, as I explained to you. But he insists on pushing that one statement. Make the statement about Jacobite, fine. But what's all the other things that you said which doesn't even support what he said? But that's the idea on the Jacobite.
If there is a relationship, comment on it. I have a question. If there is no relationship, you just don't have to comment. Question 1. I'm considering, let Caesar have those things that belong to him. Let me have those things that belong to me. Not lesser. Now, question. What important birthright was taken from Esau? Was it material junk? And should it be considered more important than another birthright that he had?
Well, I would say the birthright in a symbolic gesture is several things. It's his God-given right to freedom and dignity, if I'm understanding your question, and you say if there's a relationship. His God-given right to education, his God-given right to dignity and excellence as a man, which was usurped from Esau and which was usurped from us. Maybe I don't understand the question.
Maybe I can say it again. All right. I have a right to education. I have a right to walk in and out of this building. I have a right to the use of these streets out here.
Right.
I also have another right. Now, my earthly rights versus eternal rights. You see, all of these rights to walk on the street down there and walk in and out of this building is going to cease one day.
Right.
Now, what Jacob took, let me say it that way, from Esau was material junk. Now, my concern here is, if we are going to be indoctrinated with a concept or a thinking where if I steal this man's goods, I have impaired him eternally. Now, if that's the kind of thinking we're going to get here, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. So what I am saying to us, the finer things that we are about are not what this brother says, are not what this brother owns. There is a higher level of mentality here. And I have been led to believe that that mentality is the same kind of mentality that Jesus had. And we were admonished one day to let that kind of mind be in us, which is not taking this brother's material goods. And it's not dwelling on what this brother said of his own thinking. That's the question I have for you. Sure, he took his father's possessions that were going to him, but there was another right by birth. And that's what Masonry is all about.
say you want to talk about the double eagle. Go ahead and talk about it.
Oh, I'm going to talk about that later?
Before you do, I would like to hear Brother Uzzel's response to this word Jacob. And why it's so offensive to him, because as I stated before, I teach Bible study, and it was clearly deception.
My response to that, and this is when I brought it in the book review, over the years I've talked to several Muslims, and when I mentioned the fact that I'm a Mason, they say, oh yeah, y'all are controlled by the Jacobites. And it was until Mustafa explained that term to me, they used the term collectively. And I made very clear, I belong to Prince Hall Masonry. And they gave me the impression that you could not, it was not wise to belong to the Prince Hall or any other Masonic order. And when I showed one Muslim in Waco a letter from the Grand Chancellor of Turkey, whom I've corresponded with previously, this man is a Muslim and a Mason. What? You know, he shouldn't have been shocked. That's a sign of ignorance. Like I say, there's thousands of Muslims in the world who belong to Masonic lodges. And if one Muslim wants to join a lodge, another one doesn't, that's their prerogative. If one Christian or one Jew wants to join a lodge, that's their prerogative, or doesn't. And it's not their fellow Muslims' business to interfere with that. But, now Mustafa can correct me if I'm wrong, any Muslim who is active in the masjid and maintains his membership in a Masonic lodge is going to catch a lot of flack from his fellow Muslims. And it shouldn't be like that. The fact that someone joins the masjid, the fact that he's a Mason, that's none of the Imam's business. That's none of anybody. If he wants to maintain his membership, let him do so. Prince Hall Masonry. Prince Hall himself was not a usurper. The Prince Hall Masons are not usurpers. And most all critics of Masonry, they attack Masonry in general. Maybe the primary attack is on the white Masons. But as Jerry God forbid, Jerry Marsongill, oh boy, that's Jerry Marsongill pointed out this morning. Why did I say that? As Jerry Marsongill pointed out this morning, there's going to be fallout from it. Any time Masonry in general is attacked, there's going to be fallout, and Prince Hall is going to be affected.
Yes, sir. When you statement you made about any Muslims being a nation affect me personally, and Brother Woods, and Mr. Woods knows we do have a brother who is a professed Muslim and who is also a practicing Mason in our community. And there has never been, and inshallah, God willing, there will never be any personal attacks against his private association. In fact, Allah says in the Quran that there is no compulsion in religion. Therefore, we can make him do anything outside of what Allah asked of him to do. So in that particular case, I am a living witness that being the Imam of Masjid El-Amin Zakaria to address that particular point, because we do have, in fact, I believe the brother is an officer.
May I respond to that?
Nathaniel Palmer is workful master of Trinity Lodge from 33. He came to us from the non-Prince Hall Lodge some years ago. Trinity Lodge is a unique lodge, and I see my past master sitting back there, and I hope he does not mind me impersonating him. My junior past master, who is a Catholic. He and I have had conversations regarding the schism between some people in the Catholic Church and Freemasonry. Regarding Brother Palmer does face opposition. But I look at that like I look at the difference, the animosity that is sometimes shown between various religious denominations. And so ignorance, as I stated in my presentation this morning, does not care where it lives. It can live in the high and it can live in the low. Anybody that questions or is adamantly against what they do not know of is showing great signs of ignorance. And so Brother Palmer does face opposition, but I don't think it's an official opposition. And unofficially, we all are going to face it. When you come to St. Paul United Methodist Church and shout Your head's gonna turn around and look at you. So when Reverend Sister Fannie Mitchell of the AME Church spoke yesterday, that was a great amount of rejection. So we face this all the time. Ignorance does not care where it lives.
I would like to say that some of us think that the only ones that can be Masons are Christians. And this is not true.
Right.
This is not true. And we have to realize that people of other religions can become Masons also. And they are.
And in such a case, this can be the great light in Masonry.
It is a great light.
Wally, you have a question, brother, on the camera?
I'd like to make a comment.
Okay.
I would make a comment to what Mr. Wood said with respect to ignorance about certain situations. And that is, can anybody in here tell what the qualifications is for being an Ayatollah?
No.
Anyone?
I can't.
Not the qualifications. Anybody know what the qualifications are?
No.
Now, as I understand it, the Ayatollah office is basically found in Shiite Islam. I don't believe it's certainly.
Okay, but the qualifications, we're not talking.
Tell me what the qualifications.
Basically, a charisma.
No, the qualifications for being an Ayatollah is you have to have 3 PhDs. That's part of the qualification.
Oh, really?
That you have to have 3 PhDs. Okay, so when he speaks, he's speaking from the universities, of the Western universities too. And many of the people are ignorant of the Quran because that's the basis of all his statements. When he says he can go into that Quran and back it up.
Including his death threat.
He can go into the Quran. Yeah, I understand that. You're 100% right. But most of the so-called Islamic scholars really don't know that Quran. The so-called authorities on Islam, if they're not practicing, then they don't know that Quran. Because in that Quran, the direction, in that Quran, Allah says in the Quran, He said, do not take the soul of nobody unless it's lawful for you to do that. And He gives lawful instructions on what people lives are to be taken. That's in the Quran.
There is some precedent for such death threats have been carried out. One example, I do not remember the exact year of this, was a gentleman by the name of Al-Hallaj. He was one of the early Sufis. I don't know how many of you know much about Sufism. Sufism is the mystical variety of Islam. And Al-Hallaj went around saying, I am the truth. I am the truth. And he had become so close to God in his prayers and his meditations that he identified himself in that close relationship. And he was misunderstood and thought that he was guilty of shirk, blasphemy, by associating himself with God. He was put to death. And it was for years that it seemed like Sufism was going to break off and form a separate religion. It wasn't until several centuries later that Al-Ghazali worked out a synthesis that allowed the Sufis to remain within the Muslim fold. But in later generations recognized that Al-Hallaj was innocent of the charges brought against him. And so this deal of the satanic verses, I think about Al-Hallaj's execution, I think there are some parallels there.
Yes, but I might like to ask a question of information. Didn't the black Muslims kill Malcolm X? He was a Muslim, and I'm thinking that the men of his religion killed him because of him falling out
He was also a great man.
with Muhammad Elijah.
Okay, well, there was a lot of turmoil during that time.
Yes, it was.
And there was some great turmoil, but recent, even not today, but recent investigations show that there's great possibility that the CIA, the FBI, was linked to that death of Malcolm X because he was broadening the situation of the African American people, not just to the shores of America, but he was taking it outside of the country. Therefore, they felt threatened. So, yes, I'm sure they perhaps were able to dupe certain people that say they identify with our group, just like in the case of the Captain Morgan affair, wherein someone was killed, he was killed, and there's still controversy as to who did it, and was it an order from the Masons, et cetera, and they say it was a Mason, but it wasn't an order, et cetera. So the same situation with Malcolm X. Islam does not teach to take the life of anyone because you differ on that point. But on the Malcolm X situation, I think that the white establishment exploited a disagreement and therefore led to his death, just as they did with the Black Panthers and many other positive groups, and Martin Luther King and others.
And there is no proof that Elijah Muhammad ordered it. Let's make that very clear.
I only want to make a slight statement that I think we all have to keep in mind, and that is Masonry is not a religion, but it is a brotherhood.
Yes, it is.
And of course, one of the first lessons that we learn is that we do not deal with religion within our large hall, because religion really is each individual working out its soul salvation, as opposed to the thrust of any religion in defending its position of the group. And once we understand that, then you can understand that I think even you are growing. And when you begin to look into you, that son that you say is doing the drawing, I submit to you, take a look and see if it's drawing you. Because the curiosity in which has motivated you to the point that you have done all that delving into, at some point in time, an answer may come.
Okay, can I respond to that then? I'm going to recognize Brother Dixon. I appreciate what you're saying, especially the spirit that you're saying it in. My research into Freemasonry, I want to put that in the proper context. I was a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the founder of the builder of the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he made certain statements about Freemasonry and trying to attract us into the community. He said that there are white people who know what I'm teaching. They know Islam, what I'm teaching, but they practice it in secrecy. So with that teaching, I heard that teaching. And since we were trying to convince our people, Sergeant Muhammad speaks and all the arguments, I said, now if I could find that out, because our people, if the white man said, it's law, right? A lot of us at that time, especially back in the 30s, like I said, yeah, listen, back then they said if a black man had ice and a white man had ice, they buy the white man ice because they thought his ice was colder than the black man, right? So now I felt if I could find that out and say, look, brother's a white man practicing what Elijah is teaching too, that I could bring them in. So that was my original motivation, was to advance the cause of Islam. And then when he died and his son came into office and started explaining some other symbols, what that did was gave me more of an appreciation for the knowledge, and not so much just to bring people in, but to get an appreciation of the knowledge and see exactly what was going on. And as I say, I don't have a desire for that. But again, another point too is that nowhere in our Islamic growth, our development, and our ascension, nowhere do we make a connection with Freemasonry in terms of receiving a ring, any Freemasonry, the regalia, or anything like that. Do we make any conscious contact with Freemasonry and call ourselves Masons? But in the Masonic order, as you go up the ladder, you make the contact. So we're just responding to the contact that the system, your system makes. That's what that is. See, we're responding to that. We don't make that ascension into Masonry. But as you ascend up, as you know, in the shrine house, you get the Quran, and you say Allahu Akbar and Mecca and things. So that's, you know.
I understand,
okay,
but that's what I'm saying to you.
Okay.
That is your understanding of what Masonry does.
Well, I know that they have the Quran in the house, and I know that they say Mecca. Okay, that's okay.
Any book
I'm sure.
of which man has a belief in, you may find within our lives. But like I said, we are not concentrating on the discussion of religion because, you see, what man has decided to do is to try to pick apart any particular religion on the differences and overlooking the overwhelming things that are identical and exact. Amen. That's what the problem is when you start dealing with religion. When it has to be only one man can speak for his religion and his salvation, so whatever it be. But collectively, a brotherhood is able to give to the community relief, love,
What is perceived to be the truth?
and
philosophy.
The finality of it all, which is the morality of one's soul.
Thank you. Brother Dixon.
Oh, young blood right there,
Doc,
Yes, sir, bro.
as a writer of Freemason, I want to know what type of element, if any, do you think you are lacking or missing, having not been initiated as a Mason?
What I think that I would be lacking is, as Brother Woods pointed out, and that is the actual experience of going through, I would say, the initiation and whatever else it is that's associated with that mental and that emotional connection there with Masonry. I would think that I would be lacking that. I would think that I'm lacking all of the specific details of the order, which I'm not taking upon myself to commit myself to the examination. I don't want to enter a lodge, so I haven't committed myself to remembering the examination and presenting myself as something that I'm not. So I can point out many areas that I'm lacking in concerning Freemasonry proper, as it is called. But I do believe that because it is called speculative Masonry also, that I have just as much right to speculate on the symbols and the teachings of Freemasonry as any spectator does at any football game or basketball game. This is what I feel. So sure, I'm lacking what we would lack if we was at a Super Bowl game watching the players. Or we can call the shots and everything, but because we're not involved, but we're not a participator. So as speculative Masonry, and that's something I wanted to raise, speculating, I would think that it's operative because it operates. You can feel it, you can see it, and you can see it live in the community. And it was something I wanted to present to you, brothers, about speculative and operative. That to speculate, see that to speculate is to guesstimate, to theorize on it. You see, you don't have to necessarily be involved. But the operative, the physical, to actually have it operate in your life, to operate in your community, is where it really is at. Because you can always speculate and theorize, and I don't think we as a people have time to really theorize and speculate about our situation. Our situation is real. The unemployment, right? The homeless, the this, the that. We can't speculate. We know for reality what the situation is. So in Islam, we don't call it speculative. It is called al-haq, the sure reality, the sure truth. So we're inclined to believe that we work like anyone else with the sure truth, with the sure reality. Well, I know there's many things that I'm lacking as a Mason, but my intent is to establish dialogue and for us to understand one another, as the Quran says, and I pointed out before. God, Allah, has made us tribes and communities that we may know one another and not despise one another. And we get to know each other. Yes, brother? Brother Walker.
I have to leave. Brother Mustafa, I am certainly appreciative of you coming, and we might invite you again when we go to Texas, and we might invite you again. The pages of the Philosopher's Manual. I will open that to you to allow you to
do a rebuttal
on Brother Uzzel's review, if you so desire. The pages are yours. Use it if you will.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Brother Walt.
I'm going to need Dr. Bass, Brother Uzzel, Brother Kirk, Brother Allen, and Brother Herb between now and, let's say, no later than 5 o'clock to take care of a little piece of that. I'm sorry, and Brother Foot, I'll need you up in room 1100 between now, but no later than 5, because we have to get ready for the banquet
And you can stay here as long as you
What
want.
time are we supposed to break here?
Well, I think we'll run over. Anybody want to leave? Anybody want to leave? But I have to depart, and like I said, I want to.
What is the banquet? 7?
Banquet for 7.
Is it 6:30 or 7?
7. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that I'm really appreciative of you coming. If the Grand Master of Texas authorizes it, like Brother Grand Master Wood did, we certainly will extend to you. If you don't mind, coming down again. That's 50 well. Okay, then you have an invitation next year. I will extend to you an invitation to come down. What I might try to do is also find Uzzel Mason, if I possibly can. I don't know if I can. Okay. I will extend that to you. I would like to see all those brothers that I asked for between now and say 5 o'clock at the very latest, up in the room 1100. I need all of you to come together though, okay?
Okay. Well, okay, listen, thank you very much. And you take care, right? Okay. I think the brother in the back with the gray suit. Oh, I'm sorry.
I would like to this idea of speculative ministry is not ours. It seems to have the idea that speculative ministry is something to do stupidly with chance, taking the chance.
No,
speculative ministry,
spiritual.
According to our concept, divided into 2 areas. There's operating, which is the operative ministry, and speculative ministry, which means the esoteric work of the craft, and not the exoteric. It has nothing to do with taking the chance to do this or do that. It means that speculative ministry is the divine and sublime concept of ministry, as compared to the ordinary operation in the craft. That's the difference between the two. But you give the impression that you took speculative ministry to mean taking the chance to do this or do that as you may desire. Speculative ministry means the esoteric part of the principles of the ministry, not the exoteric, that is playing ordinary work.
I understood the difference. Okay. Brother in the gray suit, baby.
Yeah, let's see what you got to say about it. Old 2-head boy there.
Well, well, as we know, birds, I'll go this way, in ancient time, they had always been a symbol of the spiritual ascension, the spiritual rise of man. And in ancient Egypt, they had 2 parts, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. In Upper Egypt, the king there wore the hawk or the eagle, representing the upper level, the spiritual plane. And in Lower Egypt, they wore the serpent, which represents the material plane. But under King Menes, king or warrior Menes, M-E-N-E-S, they united the 2, and it's called Mizraim now, and it represents Upper and Lower Egypt. So he wore the upper crown, he wore both crowns, a crown with the hawk, or the bird, and the serpent. So here we had Upper and Lower Egypt. And there, as we say, the bird represents that spiritual ascension. Now, when you speak of a double-headed eagle, which may be the Masonic Empire, the East or the West, or the Northern jurisdiction or the Southern jurisdiction, when you speak of this ascension of man, this rise of man, in Islam, we're told that there's an angel on our right and there's an angel on our left, which record all our deeds. And as you ascend rationally, and you may ascend spiritually, or consciously and subconsciously. It represents that dual nature in man, the ascension of the dual nature in man, of the positive aspect, the positive look, as well as the negative look of man. Now, in our religion, for example, we salam to the right, assalamu alaikum, in the end of our prayer. As peace be unto you and the mercy of Allah. On the left, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be unto you and the mercy of Allah. And as you Shriners know, when you call the adhan, you say, Hayya ala salat, come to prayer. You turn to the right, come to prayer. And you turn to the left, come to success. Hayalai Falak, come to success. So this double-headed eagle represents, as I'm pointing out here, it represents that the ascension, the growth of man in his dual nature. As we said, entering Solomon's temple, they had the columns Boaz and Jason. Yakin, J-C-H-I-N, Yakin, J-Ken. I know they were just like Jacob and Yaqub. No. It's a matter, okay, we'll discuss that. Nevertheless, when they entered, they had the circles on the right and the left. One representing the celestial and one representing the terrestrial, the spiritual and the material. And the Bible tells us, and this is all tied in with the ascension because it's the duality, it's the double-headedness, which would be the emphasis because it wouldn't be the wings because all of the birds have wings. It just depends on which way they're pointing, whether they're pointing up or they're pointing down, which lets you know if they're ascending or if they're descending. But they say that in the transfiguration that Jesus took his disciple up on the mountain and showed them two circles, right? Two lights, one of Elisha and one of Moses. And we know it says that they came together. The two became one. And Moses was a man who was a builder. He was a physical builder. He was a craftsman. And he built materially and other things. We know he got blessings from on high. And Elisha or Elijah, they connect them together, represents the spiritual because Elijah ascended full body and soul. So the connection here, as we see, was the material and the spiritual. And in the Quran, it says of the Creator that He's the Lord of the two east and of the two west. So when we look at the double-headed eagle, as I would understand it, it would represent that rise of man, that ascension of man. But another thing about the eagle, the outstanding thing about the eagle is his vision. See, the eagle, they say, can even look directly at the sun, or he's way up and he can look down, he can swoop down. And as we pointed out, as you go up, your vision expands. So this represents your spiritual vision, because the eagle, he sees well, way up from the heavens. And as we ascend as men, as we take higher principles, we can see humanity better. And this is what Islam is, a universal perception. It brings you into a universal perception. So again, when we talk about the bird, the eagle, as we see on the American dollar bill, and I'll point this out in the pyramid, which is material, mass, and the bird, which is spiritual. So when you see the $1 bill, what you see is balance, material and spiritual on the $1 bill, which means they should be together, they should work together as one. So in Islam, we don't believe in separation of the church and the state. We believe it all works together for the advancement of man. The church, that's a history thing. That's from history, the separation of church and state, because of the oppression, see, of religion and of people. But in terms of the original development, man and religion, or the secular world and the religious world, really worked together, because it was the religious people who used to be the leaders in the society in ancient Egypt and other times. You see, so there was no problem with that. It was only until certain popes and others were in rule, that oppressed the people. But again, we're talking about with the eagle, that spiritual rise, that spiritual ascension, taking on wings. And for the Muslims during Ramadan, when we fast, we ascend. It's an ascension. And 33 degrees, as we know, we say 33, if you multiply 3 by 3, is 9. So it's the 9th month. The 9th month of the calendar of the Muslims when we fast during Ramadan. And that's when we make an ascension. And the Prophet Muhammad, you who know, he ascended on up to 7 heavens, and he met 8 men and himself making 9. But in a long backward route, I tried to answer.
I told you earlier that there is something
maybe it ain't
I would say this,
it's not two things by now.
On the two-headed eagle a lot deeper than the average 32nd and 33rd degree Mason care to admit. But it still is case. In the first place, it's not an eagle. An eagle is the first cousin to a buzzard. It's not an eagle.
I said a hawk. Well, even a the phoenix. Okay.
Now,
couple of
you
birds.
turn behind you.
A phoenix, more than likely, right?
All right.
It's a phoenix, and he rises from his ashes.
Yes, but where does the phoenix live?
Well, maybe you can tell me that.
He lives in the east.
And he right.
And yes, all right, now let's talk about what you're missing. Let's talk about what you're missing. The eagle, and if you will look at that same dollar bill, you will not see the head of an eagle. You will see the body of an eagle. You see, Freemasonry deals in allegory, and just like Islamic leaders, what they know is not receptive by those that follow all the time.
That's true.
The same way with Freemasonry. This society deals with what the average Freemason cannot comprehend. We have many, very Freemasons. Feast on that. The two-headed eagle, as we call it, is one of the highest symbols. You're right, the ascension. My brothers, when you are able to fly with the eagles, you can walk with the turkeys. It's just that simple. And things that you get upset about, Uzzel get upset about, I don't. I believe I can fly with the eagles. When I am able to accept the teachings of Islam and also the teachings of Christianity, and know that Brother Stanley brought out that that is basic relation, not petty differences. Brother Johnny Hassan and I, we are forming a relationship that is not built on materialistic needs, but is the essence of the song that we sang in closing out our church service. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love. And that word Christian is not anything offensive, but it is a way of life. Because it is like the fellowship of love. What name? Why are we called Christian? The term means for Christ. Christ means anointed one, and Christian is.
That day, what were they doing? When they said it that day, the first time, what were they doing?
I don't know. They were first called Christians at where was Athens or.
But what were they doing?
I don't know. What were they doing?
They were ridiculed.
Oh, okay. So it's the name of ridicule.
Because they were originally called Nazarene.
So whatever it is, no matter what you're called, it's just like that eagle. No matter what you're called, until you raise the veil of illusion, you will never see the true meaning of what it is. And most people, we call it, everybody calls it a two-headed eagle, but it's not an eagle. An eagle is the first cousin of a buzzard. You know, he's majestic in nature. He's a beautiful bird to look at. You can trace him back to his other first cousin, the hawk, in ancient Egypt, upper Egypt. But still, it is not an eagle. And that 33rd degree, it unites the physical with the spiritual. And in the words of my good friend, my grand lecturer, Dr. Hyman, when you ask about medical knowledge, when you want to ascend, my brothers, you have a bone starting at the anus that goes up, and it ends at the globe. Thank you, sir. And in between this end and this end is 33 bones. And your goal in life, or your attainment in life, depends on which end you use the most. Whether you use the materialistic or rise up to the sanctum sanctorium, it depends on which end you'll use.
Very good, very good. Well, when I call it the double-headed eagle, like most of you gentlemen, is based on the Masonic material that is written. I mean, you can check with Mackey and some of the most outstanding writers on Freemasonry.
Just don't call me Albert Pike.
And yeah, I learned it last time.
You have grown from that one, and I appreciate it.
So I think that the correction which should be made there. But it's,
may I say this,
yes, you may,
Brother El-Amin, I am very proud of men like you, men like Lamont Dixon, who allows their mind to go beyond structured thought.
Yeah.
You keep allowing your mind to go there. The fire that is locked up in you will burn brightly one day. You may not be here to see that fire, but it will burn brightly because